Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Agahi with your host, Warisa Zainab. Once again, we are going to invite Gary all the way from Toronto, who is a social worker and has tremendous amount of experience working with people from diverse backgrounds and multiple issues related to their psychological well-being and mental health. Gary, once again, a big warm welcome to Agahi.
So good to be with you again, Marissa. I love you.
Same here. Thank you so much for taking the time out. I know this is holiday season and you've got your commitments and you're a busy man. So today we will be talking about attachment theory. And this is quite important and of significance in the sense that every human being, as a baby, as a toddler, is attached to the caregiver, forms a kind of bond that lasts a lifetime, and it definitely impacts the child or the baby in later adulthood. So I'm going to ask you what attachment theory really means so that our viewers know what we're going to talk about today.
Sure. Look, and this is a theory. It's been well tested, well researched. And what we see is the degree to which the infant, in a sense, connects to the caregiver and feels secure in that connection. It kind of sets them up for all relationships throughout their life and how they connect to the persons with whom they're relating to. And this sense of attachment theory, you also use the word bonding. Yeah. These are actually very, very different concepts, attachment versus bonding. When we talk of attachment, we're talking of the degree to which I feel secure, connected. When we want to ask, why is this attachment important? If I am hurt, I'm going to think in terms of who is that attachment figure. That is who I would go to for comfort. When we think in terms of bonding, we're thinking in terms of who's my buddy, who are we going to shoot hoops with, who are we going to have, fun with. That's a bond. And so I can be out shooting hoops. Let's say I roll over on my ankle and I sprain myself. I'm not going to the person with whom I'm bonded to feel safe and secure. I'm going to run home, presumably, to the parent to make me feel safe and secure and healthy again. So, this is how we, in part, differentiate bonding from attachment.
Right. So that was the definition. Now, what is the whole concept behind this attachment? Because as humans, it's quite natural to get emotionally or physically attached to another human being. But why is it so important in the field of psychology?
Yeah, it's about the quality of that attachment to our caregivers right through birth and in our first few years of life. That sets a template, a model for how we connect to all other persons who are close to us. So by way of example, if I may, and this is a bit of a lengthy example, so bear with me. Child is born. This is sign language for birth. It's very graphic. However, child is born, and the child goes wah, normal. It's the parent's job to figure out what does wah mean. So you watch new parents, young parents, they pick the child up and the first thing they do is they sniff the behind. They're trying to see, did this child just poop themselves? Is it a poopy diaper that's creating distress for the child from which they seek relief? So check the diaper, not the diaper. Maybe the child is signaling wah because they're hungry. So whether it's breast or bottle, we try and feed the child, but the child fusses, not hungry, still going wah. Then we pick the child up and go coochie coochie coo, coochie coochie, and the child relaxes. Okay, look, the source of distress could have been boredom. Infants can get bored. People don't realize that. So they're looking to us to in a sense, entertain, provide some distraction to the infant, and the infant relaxes. When you look at this experience through the eyes of that child just knows I'm in distress, I signaled, and somehow or other, this person brought comfort and relief. Kind of neat. Now, let's say we have that same child here beside me on my floor. They're a toddler, a two-year-old, two something. And this is a very boring place for a toddler on the floor beside me, but there is a hallway. And so this toddler looks up at me as if to say, Daddy or Uncle Gary or Granddad, can I go explore?
Yeah.
I'm a healthy 2-year-old. I want to explore. And so I say to the child, yeah, because I know what's out there. It's safe. Yeah, you can go take a look in the hall, sweetheart. And the child looks at me, starts to walk out the door, gets only so far. Oh my gosh, where's Uncle Gary, Granddad, father, mother? Comes running back in. Am I still safe? I couldn't see you for a moment. This, we call this rapprochement. But I look at the child and go, you're safe, you can still explore. And off the child goes to explore.
Right.
Happily. Because they've got that secure platform from which to move forth.
Yes.
Now, this 2-year-old, let's place them in the schoolyard, in kindergarten. They fall, they scrape their knee. Yeah. And because they've had these experiences with the parent growing up, they're scanning the environment and they're looking for a parental surrogate, substitute. Who else looks older, maybe has gray hair, who can bring me comfort? Because I'm used to older people bringing me comfort when in distress. So this is the child that's going to go to the teacher or the playground supervisor and go, I hurt my knee, I hurt my knee. And hopefully they're going to say, you know, it's okay, Gary, you're fine. Let's put a SpongeBob SquarePants Band-Aid on it. And I, oh, and off you go. Now let's track this out over time. This young one that we've grown up is now a young adult, and they're in an intimate relationship. They're coming home from work and they arrive a half hour late. And their partner is like, where were you? Are you okay? What happened? Oh, the traffic on whichever highway you want in whichever country you're in. We all have one of those that is forever clogged. Oh, the traffic on the so-and-so highway, it was awful. Oh, you poor dear, come, let me make you a cup of tea. And because I have the secure attachment, when this person comes in a sense, disheveled, I can bring comfort to them and they to me.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's change, and we call this a secure attachment style that is developed right from the moment we're born. We go, wow, and the parent meets our needs. Lovely.
Yes.
Let's change it up. Child is born. We're back to this. Child goes, wow. Only this time, the parent doesn't respond. What does the child do? They tune it up. Wow, wow. Nothing. Wow, 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 wow.
Still no one.
Well, this is a child that's going to learn to not go wow. Or will only always go wow because they're in distress. Nothing happens.
So this is a result of neglect, you can say. Right.
Yeah. And you know, we don't need to label the parent pejoratively as neglectful. Sometimes the parent has their own distractions.
Right.
It's mental health. It could be conflict in the home. It could be poverty, where we're food insecure and we're worried about where our next meal is coming from. But these things distract from meeting the needs of the child. Now we have this child sitting here, and the child would like to go explore, looks at me, gets blank from me, and the child doesn't know, can I, should I? No. I'll just sit here.
Yeah.
Now this child's in the playground following all these examples, and they've hurt their knee, and rather than running and looking for a teacher, they just sit on the playground floor, crying to themselves. If they're lucky, a teacher or a playground supervisor discovers them and says, yeah, Gary, what's the matter? Oh, I hurt my knee. And I'm almost surprised that somebody's even asking. now I'm a young adult and my partner comes home that half hour late, and they come through the door, and rather than running to them, what's the matter? Are you okay? Oh, are you home? Well, yeah, I'm home. Didn't you notice I'm late? Oh, yeah, I guess so. Well, aren't you concerned? Oh, why? Did something happen?
Mm.
Don't you care about me? Oh, yeah, I care. Like all of a sudden, I'm not responsive. I'm
Yes.
not connected the same.
Mm.
So, there's a kind of a passive withdrawnness from this. And this is, a poorly attached
Mm.
child, disconnected. The name escapes me right now for this particular style, but you still have the sense of that. Let's go on to a third attachment style. The child is born, and this time when the child goes, wow, you know what? Sometimes the parents are responsive. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Other times, non-responsive. Wah, 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 wah. Other times I'm going, wah, 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 and the parent comes and I'll give you something to wah about.
Mm.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Now you're the source of my distress.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go, wow, I don't know if I'm going to be cared for, ignored,
Yeah.
or hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Let's follow this child. We put them here beside me.
Yeah.
This child would like to go explore. That's normal developmental behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so the child puts up their antennae and they're trying to read me.
Yeah.
Is Gary in a good mood? Is Gary in a bad mood? If I ask to go explore, am I going to get into trouble? Am I going to be facilitated? Am I going to be ignored? And, maybe the child can't read me.
Yeah.
So the child is actually sitting there anxious. Oh my God, I don't know which Gary we have. I'm going to sit here and shred paper because I don't know how to dispel that tension that I feel inside of me.
Yeah.
I'm disorganized. And we actually call this a disorganized attachment style. Now, this child in the playground who has fallen, hurt their knee, I don't know who to go to for help, whether I can trust them, whether it will help me, whether I'll be, and I've got the first kid who comes near me, I lash out and bop the child. Because again, I'm dispelling this distress. Only now I'm labeled a violent kid.
And what is this attachment style called?
This is called a disorganized attachment style. Now my partner comes home that half hour late,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know how to take that half hour. It can trigger things in me because I was never confident in those folks taking care of me. I can't be confident in why this person is late. Person comes home late, they walk in, I go, you're late.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, yeah, I'm late. God, what's going on with you? Oh, nothing. Should something be going on with me? Look, the traffic was bad. Oh, the traffic was bad. Are you trying to insinuate that I'm lying, that it was something else? Oh, no. Why? Do you feel guilty? So the same behavior on the part of the partner can trigger and elicit such a different response depending on our attachment style. And our attachment style can inadvertently undermine the quality of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a secure attachment style, an insecure attachment style, and a disorganized attachment. This is why we listen to and appreciate attachment theory. Because if we understand that some of these issues, they date back to the earliest of our childhood. And what I tell parents is that our childhood have long legs, and they carry us through to adulthood. I like that on the video image because you can see that. This is why attachment theory is so potent and important. I explain this to folks who come to me who have trouble in their relationships, because when we have trouble in relationships, very often we're fighting at the surface level.
Mhm.
He said this, she said that, they said this, they said that. And we don't realize that what is underneath it can be a tremendous insecurity that has nothing to do with the present.
It goes back
Wow.
to childhood. Those were some real powerful examples that you gave, Gary. And I personally find it really intriguing that something that happened such a long time ago has shaped and formed your, like programmed your mind in such a way that it will have an impact for the rest of your life on all kinds of relationships.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
just personal, intimate relationships, but also relationships with your work colleagues, with the neighbors, any human being that you come across and interact
That
with.
we have to interact with, where we have to form some degree of a trusting reciprocal relationship.
Wow.
Absolutely. So it could be your doctor, your dentist, your partner, a teacher, a colleague, a friend, a supervisor. The lens with which we look at them. Do we look at them through a trusting lens, because that is my experience of the world from early childhood, or do we look at them through a kind of a suspect lens, a distrusting lens, where you're going to have to prove yourself to me, and I'm going to always interpret things negatively to start, because that was my experience growing up, if that's what it was. So, you know, to talk to people, and for the folks watching this, I encourage them to self-reflect. What was your, and you know, some people will say to me, but I didn't have bad parents.
Yeah.
This isn't necessarily about bad, it could be bad parents. Look, it could be. But in today's time, how many of us are overworked, stretched,
Yes.
stressed, food insecure, housing insecure, have mental health distractions?
Yes.
These are things that interfere with our care of the wee ones when they're going wow, wow, wow. We may not be as responsive, not because we're neglectful in a deliberate I don't care sense, but structurally it can be built in. Larissa, today, try surviving as a family without 2 incomes.
Yes.
What does that mean for a parent's availability to be responsive? And then when we are, we're so burnt out. My wife and I, we babysat our grandkids for 4 days in a row. And they're 2 and 4. We slept, like we deliberately left Monday open because we knew we'd be so tired.
Yeah.
And we were privileged. We had the luxury of sleeping in and getting up late.
Yeah.
We were tired from those 2 little ones, and they're good kids. They are good kids with no developmental issues, no learning issues, at least, you know, not discovered yet. And we were exhausted. So, and now we've got this pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many reasons why parents are exhausted, stretched, stressed. So this attachment theory, we need to be mindful of what our style may be or may have been influenced towards by our own upbringing. And we want to be mindful now of this as we raise our kids. Are we attentive? And this isn't about spoiling them. It's about, am I there when they need us, to keep them safe, to have them feel secure, to fill their tummies when they're hungry. So as we're talking about this, it can help those adults who never recognized that the problems of today may have those long legs from the past. And it's to help current parents to appreciate the necessity of their availability to their kids at this point as best as they can.
Yeah.
As best as they can, because structurally, it's a stretch.
if the caregiver is not a parent, for example, both the parents are working full-time, long hours, and the toddler or the baby spends most of his or her time in a childcare service or a nursery, would the staff members in the nursery or daycare center be classified as caregivers then? Primary.
Yeah, absolutely. And they will contribute to the attachment style of the child. We picked up our 2-year-old granddaughter from her daycare, and we were able to look in the window. It's in this house, and you stand here to pick up the child, but you can see into the window into the toddler room. No, not the toddler room. These were younger children, maybe a yearish old. When they stand there, they're very unsteady. And it was so delightful to see the workers with those couple of kids, that they were steadying them when they were trying to walk, and as they're trying to make this bead go up and down through this wire, or the wire through the bead, they're there to help guide the hand. And if the little child's finger got pinched between the bead and the wire, the care provider, the daycare provider, the child care worker was there to give a little, "You're okay, come, let's try again."
Yeah.
It was delightful.
Mm.
So I'm a proponent of early childhood education. I'm a proponent of daycare, quality daycare. Big issue here in Canada. Federally, our federal government is in the midst of trying to roll out a national daycare strategy for our country. And most of our provinces and territories have signed on to that. We're still waiting for the province that I am in, the province of Ontario, to sign on to that. And this is why we want it. We appreciate that to put a roof over your head and food in our belly,
Yeah.
it often takes two working parents, and we need quality daycare so that they can meet the attachment needs of these children at the same time.
And that's a challenge in today's world. Because like you said, it's normal for people to experience burnout at the end of the day when they return home from their work. And then there is this rush to prepare dinner, to put the children to bed, prepare for the next day. So the time that is spent together as a family, or the time that is spent between the parents and the children.
It's shrinking.
Yes, maybe an hour or two in some cases.
And look, this is in first world nations that we're talking about. What if you're a third world country? What if you're a war-torn country? What if the bombs are raining down around you?
Oh, yeah.
We have many examples of this currently. And so to meet the needs of that infant toddler amidst that horrific backdrop is even more difficult. So I do meet with adult refugees where that was their growing up experience. And now they're having trouble in their intimate relationships and carrying them on and making them successful. They never had any degree of security on so many different levels. And again, this has nothing to do with good parents, bad parents. This is a structural, situational issue. Yet it is so affecting of the child growing up through that, now an adult. And it's weird because when things are going well, the adult with an attachment issue is waiting for the other shoe to drop. I don't know if you're familiar with that expression. They're waiting for something to go wrong because that has always been their experience. Nothing good lasts. And with that, a tension can build up in the person. How do I resolve that tension? Maybe by pushing you over the edge, so I finally have that conflict that I, self-fulfilling prophecy that I was expecting. But the weird thing is, now I can actually relax. It's not healthy. Not good, but at least, okay, we've had it, we've gotten it over, and we build up to the next time, and we have this one, this cycle. And all of this from the insecure attachment.
So looking at different cultures, and you gave a fantastic example of the population that has experienced war, conflict, whether it's man-made disaster or natural disaster, they carry this trauma throughout their lives. And of course, it impacts the child rearing practices as well, because if the the environment that they're living in is not secure, not safe, then it will definitely have an impact. But when people in their adulthood have these relationship problems or fears or insecurities, how do you figure out what kind of experiences they had? Because as a child or as a baby, you wouldn't remember whether your parent was responsive or not responsive. You wouldn't remember that. So
No,
as a
those are good
counselor,
questions.
how do you do that?
So in interviewing the person, the client, personally, I ask a lot of questions. What were the circumstances of your growing up? How did your parents get along? Was there ever any yelling or shouting? Pardon me, any screaming, any name calling? Did anyone ever hit one another? Where did you grow up and at what time? So that has, different connotations for different countries in different periods. So, oh, okay. Wasn't there a civil war at that time in your country? Well, yes, there was. And what was your parents' role in that? Oh, well, this parent did this and this parent did that. Wow, that must have been a lot of disruption. That, yes, it was. So we can make inferences based on the information we glean as we explore the growing up context, circumstance, and experiences of the now adult. Yeah. And we can help them to understand, wow, you were left to your own devices a lot of the time. No wonder you're so independent now. And if you're so independent now, to think of a dependency on your partner, or not even in terms of a dependency, but a collaboration with your partner. You're not used to that. You have to manage everything on your own because that's how you learn to survive.
On your own. Yeah.
And now, now that we're in a relationship, your partner is saying, why don't you rely on me for anything? Am I not important to you? So for many of these folks, sometimes we have to work against the grain of our attachment style. And that
sounds
scary,
yeah,
risky, and it literally takes a mindfulness, an awareness to catch oneself in that moment. I'll give a bizarre example.
Go on.
I grew up in Toronto, Bathurst and Wilson, and I'm the youngest of three boys, so a family of five. Bathurst and Wilson in Toronto, those intersecting streets, that community, that's the Jewish part of town. Everyone was Jewish. So growing into a Jewish family in the Jewish part of town, I literally thought the whole world was Jewish. It's built in structurally. No one said the whole world. It's just, that's the experience. So, I am now a young social worker. I'm fast forwarding. And I'm conducting a series of meetings in a children's mental health center for the very first time. A newly minted social worker. And this is my second job in the field. And I thought I did those meetings really well.
Yeah.
My supervisor takes me aside and says, how do you think it went, Gary? I said, I think it went great. He says, oh, no. It wasn't good at all. What do you mean? She says, you were talking over people. You didn't give an opportunity for people to answer. You were loud. You actually shut down a lot of the conversation.
That was some feedback.
Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I'm of Russian Polish descent by hereditary heritage and culture. So by nature, we're loud. When you sit at our dinner table, it's pass the potatoes. You don't sit back waiting for them to come along because you'll never eat.
Yeah.
And we would have loud political conversations. We weren't mad. We were just
being
of
ourselves.
Russian Polish descent. That's right. And so I conducted that meeting as if it was my dinner table.
Oh.
And my supervisor says, have you never had dinner at the home of a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant? kind of a weird question. And then I thought of one of my childhood friends who was white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. And I said, well, yeah, at their house, no elbows on the table. You sat back. The father organized the passing of the different meats and vegetables around the table. He even organized the conversation. How was your day? How was your, and you took turns talking and contributing. Our table, it was every person for themselves over each other, and somehow or other at the end of the meal, we were all happy too. But this is where, you know, in my sense, culture, it's not attachment style per se, but culture influences, has those long legs into adulthood. And then we meet somebody from another culture or try to work within the dominant culture. And we see, oh my gosh, my styles don't mesh.
Yeah.
And so I literally had to, at the next series of meetings that I managed, I'm sitting on my hands, because when my hands come out, the voice gets louder.
That must have been hard.
And I'm nodding, you know, psychiatrist, please give us your report. Anyone have any questions for the psychiatrist? Speech language pathologist, please give us your report. Right? And so it feels totally artificial to me, totally contrived. It was a better meeting. We got better reports out of it. And so coming back to this attachment style, we learn from early, we learn hopefully from the therapist. This was your style. Here's where it comes from, and here's how it impacts today. Here's some of the things that you can do differently when you're in certain circumstances. And like any new behavior, it has to be practiced. And so we're not going to do a personality ectomy. But so I'm still of Russian Polish descent. I'll still be loud in my family and with certain friends. I have one friend, he's Greek. We go out, we go to a restaurant, and within 10 minutes, everyone is staring at us because we are so loud. And then it's like, oh, Estes, they're looking at us again. We're going to have to don't, right? And these are even in Middle East restaurants where everyone else is loud. We're the loudest. So we have to be mindful when we receive this information, when we figure out what our attachment style was, for better or for worse, or that of our partners. And now we have to, you know, so if my partner comes home and he has a disorganized attachment style, and he goes, well, I'm late, don't you care? Rather than getting offense, why are you talking mean to me? You just walked through the door. Because I know the attachment style, I'm going to say, you're thinking I'm already going to be mad at you for being late. No, I'm not mad. I'm only concerned, sweetheart. Wow. Wow. How restorative is that?
Yeah.
Right? But if we don't know the upbringing, the attachment style, of course we're going to be offended from the get-go, because we're not looking beneath. We don't realize this is that other person's wiring. And I go, oh, remember what the therapist said? You've just come in looking to blame. And I realize I'm not here to be angry with you. And then the person gets to go, oh my gosh, sorry about that. Thank you. How wonderful. This is what we try and do in therapy. That's the whole point of it. But it does take practice.
What if the person coming to you is the one who's on the receiving end? So, for example, the one coming to you has a spouse or a partner or a family member, a work colleague who seems to have the issue, but they are either not, you know, in a state of denial, or maybe they don't realize that there is a problem, but it's affecting everybody else around them.
And well, in fact, I coach many people how to work with a difficult partner or a difficult former partner. They have kids, you still got to be connected. And they have this style that can be bombastic, that could be negative, that they're projecting all manner of blame on you. How do you deal with that? And we can actually provide many strategies. Now, having said that, if this person with whom you're with is abusive, forever hurling names at you, slamming doors, throwing things, pushing, shoving, hitting, choking, keeping money from you, isolating you from others. Attachment style or not, you need to be safe. So I want to put that proviso in, that if you are in an abusive situation, do seek help for you. You may actually need to find a safe way of exiting that relationship. But let's pretend it's not as severe as that. So we're not worried about the integrity of the person, the safety of the person in this context, but this person, they're challenging. So we can teach this person, let's look underneath. What are their fears that they don't realize, that aren't being stated, but from which they are acting?
Yeah.
So you can look, sweetheart, I'm not leaving you. I just went to the store to get eggs. I can appreciate that it was upsetting because you didn't know where I was for the past hour. Here are the eggs.
Instead of reacting.
And say, well, why don't you trust me? God, you're always blaming me for something. You're always so suspicious.
Yeah.
That'll bring an escalation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So attachment theory is a very, very powerful way of understanding human behavior, what contributes to it, and how to work with it. And once we understand what that person's attachment style is, then we can modify to better interact with them in a way that isn't triggering. And if that person is amenable, and not all are, we can help that person to also be mindful to manage how they are interpreting or actually misinterpreting the world as they're interacting with it. By the way, sometimes the person living with that person, why do I have to change? Why do I have to?
Yeah.
You don't have to,
If you want to continue living, then in that environment.
Or what you see is what you get, but now at least you understand it. Up to you.
Yeah.
Up to you. And indeed, I work with some folks where no one feels like changing.
And that's hard.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not going to change the situation, no.
No, and they're going to continue to likely lead a miserable life together or a miserable life separated if they still have to be connected through their kids. And so we don't always get, we don't always get good outcomes. It takes a degree of self-reflection, an ability to recognize, maybe I do have some issues that I hadn't seen. Look, when my supervisor said to me, no, that wasn't a good meeting, I had choices.
Yes.
I could, to heck with you, you don't know what you're talking about. I thought it was great. That's a choice. Or, what do you mean? And okay, I'll do it differently next time.
Yeah.
Personally, I treat all of life as an experiment. Yeah. If this doesn't work, I'm happy to try something else. It's an experiment, and you see how it goes.
You mentioned that you teach people to be more mindful. What I'm thinking here is that if this attachment style is something that kind of shapes your personality or formulates your mindset, how can just being mindful, how can just being in the present change your behavior, and how can you unlearn everything that you have learned over the years? Because it's kind of embedded in you, isn't it? That must be really, really difficult and hard to do.
Beautiful question. Beautiful question. So there I am in the meeting, and I've been given instruction, feedback, information. My impulse is to go, right, and go Polish on them, or Russian Polish descent. I don't speak Russian, I don't speak Polish, but to go cultural from my background on the person. And as I take that breath and go, I self-reflect. I go, look at my posture, look at my body, look at my mouth, look at what I'm about to do. I literally catch myself. and go, oh, this is what we talked about. So we have an emotional response, and for most of us, our emotion leads to action. When we're seeking to be mindful, we see the emotional response, we catch ourselves, we reflect on it, and that leads to the capacity to think. And then as we think, as we reflect, then we can generate alternatives. I can continue to do this, or I can sit on my hands and gently nod and ask people for their input one by one, and sit back and have faith that as we do that, we'll still get all the information. Okay, and so this is how we manage when before feeling led to behavior. Now we catch the feeling, self-reflect, generate some alternatives. I can come along strong, I can come along weak, I can defer to someone else, I can speak this way, I can speak that way. I can think rather than I know it all, maybe this person has something to offer, let me have them speak first. Wow. And then we implement and see how it goes. Oh, son of a gun, it worked out. And that's very rewarding. Come on, that's very reinforcing when we do try this out. We put thinking between feeling and action, and we have a positive outcome for it. So I'm going to try that again. Or maybe we don't have a positive outcome. Then we have this feedback loop that says, okay, that one didn't work. Let me try this.
A different approach.
Yeah, because I've generated a number of different things that I can do differently. Back to being experimental. Let's see what works. And even in the moment, if I've upset you, Larissa, I will see it in your face. I mean, just being human. And I'll look, I go, that didn't come across as I intended, did it? I think I just annoyed you. And you're like, yes, Gary. I go, okay, let me think this through. You know what? Here's what I think I should have said instead of what I did. I've obviously triggered you. And I came across in a way that was distressing to you. I apologize for that. Here's where my concern was. And then you go, oh, okay, Gary, thank you. Now you're relaxed and you can proceed.
Or I could just take a break and then pretend there were technical difficulties and ban you. This sounds like a really long process. Like you said, it's going to take a lot of practice. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. So you'll have to be really patient with yourself. A lot of reflection, a lot of thinking, a lot of taking a step back and observing your own self.
Let me speak to that. I love being a therapist. Oh my God, 40 years in the business. There were a group of therapists in the late 70s, early 80s, from Palo Alto, California. And amongst them was this fellow, Paul Watzlawick, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. You'd think I get it because it is kind of a Polish name. However, he talked about first order change and second order change. First order change are changes that are matters of degree. So if I'm annoyed 6 times a day and now I'm annoyed 3 times a day, that's a first order change of 3 points. Versus second order change, which is a change in kind. So sometimes we work with people, or I work with people, and I give them this feedback. And there truly is this remarkable aha moment that things go clickety click click for them. And for whatever reasons, the change is really fast, quick, spontaneous, and it alters behavior immediately on a go forward basis. They just get it and go, oh my God, I can catch myself doing that and do this instead.
Yeah.
And they just go out and do it.
Mm.
And they experience a remarkable transformative experience. Then there are other folks who don't have that aha moment, and they're struggling to accept or understand or contextualize. And so there we're going to see more incremental change, and we have to teach the steps a bit more behaviorally for this first order change. So we're walking them through it. And in that case, it can be a much longer process of change.
I can
First order, second order change. Paul Watzlawick, really interesting therapist from the 70s, 80s. Look him up. Yeah. Change, I think, is the name of the book.
Any final words of wisdom, as we only have a minute left?
Not words of wisdom, but words of gratitude. Larissa, it's just delightful to be with you again and to be able to have this opportunity through you to bring this information to countless persons. We only hope that it is of service to them, their children, and their families.
What is the best way to contact you if one of our colleagues want to seek your
Sure. I never meet with anyone who hasn't been to my website first to read the counseling page. So, because my approach is different than many of my colleagues, I won't go into it, but it's there on the page, as well as my fees and how I do things. www.yoursocialworker.com. And from the home page, you can also click to go to my professional Facebook page, because I'm posting on these kinds of things, parenting, family life, relationships, several times a day on Facebook. So those who follow me get the benefit of my snippets of information regularly.
Thank you so much, Gary. Once again, it was absolutely brilliant watching you and listening to you and hearing all these amazing examples that you have given. And I personally learned so much today. Wish you all the best with the fantastic work that you do. And to all the viewers who are watching, you know how to contact Gary if you have any questions or if you would like to make an appointment with him. Next Saturday, we'll join you again with another guest and another topic related to your psychological well-being and mental health. Till then, look after yourselves and each other. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.